So thank you very much. I will myself try to keep to the 5 minutes, so just go for slightly over 5 minutes. First, I'm not a professional in your industry, but I'm sufficiently curious to speak with a reasonable degree of authority to raise issues which will prick you as practitioners. One of the greatest things that I have discovered when I travel across Africa is that Kenyans are good. I've gone to places in Africa and I meet managers. I remember 2 years ago I was in Monrovia in Liberia, and the hotel manager was Kenyan. And I asked for ugali and sukuma wiki, and he told me I'm the first person to have a greenhouse in Monrovia in Liberia, and I had ugali in Liberia. Last year I was somewhere in Costa Rica, San Jose, in Central America. I met a Kenyan hotel manager. And one can say, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything new. And it is largely because of these facilities called utalii. When the Kenyan government entered into an arrangement with the Swiss government at that time, the standards were kept, and Kenya remains a good ground for training professionals in this sector. Of course, the hotel itself has over the years not done as well as it should. Typical African, that we don't maintain standards, and it's important that we do. There was a time when this was the place of choice when you wanted a good hotel, and I'm glad to hear that efforts are being made to revamp it. And I hope one of the things, you'll allow me, because this is who I am, to say that public institutions tend to rely on government too much. If you have a facility of this nature, what more support do you need from government? You are capable of generating funds, but you, government, also, you don't ask that money is generated, it is sent to you, then you take 80% of it, then send 20%, and you expect hotels to function. This is the African problem in this sector. If you look at the statistics in the hotel industry right now, and you look at the hotel chains that were started in Kenya immediately after independence or after 1965 with section of paper number 10, all the chains of hotels that were government managed have been sold, and you know them. It is not that people stopped eating in those hotels. It is not as if nothing stopped happening, but we were merely incompetent. And this is our problem. If you look at the hotels that were sprinkled around the country, whether it's Sunset in Kisumu, whether it's Sirikwa, the question is, why did they die? Why did they die? And why is it that foreign chains right now, you see many of our chains that are here in Kenya and in most of Africa are foreign chains. If it is Marriott or Novotel, they are from outside of the country. And I know if you look at the statistics, Kenya, give or take, the best we have ever done is to have about 2 million visitors in any 1 year. Pathetic. Compare that with Egypt, which is the best in Africa and receives about 14.5. If you look at the statistics, they hit about 14 million, Egypt. But that is nothing. The bazaar market in Istanbul, in Turkey, receives on average daily between 250,000 and 400,000 on a daily basis. The question is, what do they do that we don't do? What do they do that we don't do? Because if we look at our own sector, or the facilities that in theory we can offer, we are much better than them. What is it that they do that we don't do? Do they have better trained staff? Do they have better facilities? Why is it that in the last few years, facilities such as the Hilton have gone down? Why is it that Intercontinental has gone down, and I'm told the Department of Immigration will be moving into Intercontinental in the coming year? Why? What are we not doing? And one of the things that we do in Africa and in Kenya is, in the name of enacting legislation, we overregulate. And when you overregulate, you kill creativity. If you go to many of the countries in Europe and America and increasingly in Asia, the governments know when not to regulate, to create an environment where creativity is given its pride of place. And this is one of the things. You are from a quasi-governmental body. The question is, what room do you have for maneuver? If you go to Europe and America, we don't even have ministries for tourism. It's an African thing. You have departments that deal with tourism, not a whole individual saying, I'm in the Minister of Tourism, and taking half-naked dancers at the airport when you receive 2 million visitors. These are things that must be said, because when you meet in other fora, we tend to be too nice to each other so that we don't speak the truth. Look at France, which received the highest number of visitors in the world. Last year alone, France received 100 million visitors. That is twice the population of Kenya. In other words, all Kenyans went to France. Give them twice went to France, and give them expenditure of just $100 each. How much is that in terms of that amount of money to the economy? Is possibly bigger than the entire GDP of all East African countries combined. Today, if you look at the East African sector, you look at the Kenyan sector, Kenya is beginning to lose out to Tanzania, because Kenya is becoming a country that continues to sell a single product, and we are not even marketing it well. Look at the charges at the Mara. Look at the taxes when you look at your bill. When I come to this hotel, look at the chain of taxes. Does it go back to industry? The catering levy? Where does it go? And these are the things that I am urging you to confront. Because if you don't confront them, then we will not realize our potential. If you look at some of the arguments under the East African community, one of the proposals very early on, and you'll know, is that East Africa should be marketed as a single market. Because if you market it as a single market and you have free movement of persons, a tourist that comes into Kenya then has the possibility of going to Tanzania, going to Serengeti, going to Uganda. And if you do that, you'll discover that instead of receiving 2 million visitors, we'll possibly be receiving 10 in 2 years. And if we did that, the contribution to the economy would increase in a monumental way. The other day, I went to the Marriott Hotel. Of course, that is not an African Kenyan chain. It is the Marriott. The building is by Chinese. So I asked, how many restaurants do you have? They said they have 2. One Indian restaurant, where they make naan and dal and all these other things. The other one is Chinese. And I asked, where is the African one? Because we are in Nairobi, Kenya. And when one goes to what one may describe as culinary adventure, what do you want to offer? When one comes to Kenya, have we decolonized our training? And I'm suggesting to you that you have not decolonized your training. Your training is still colonial. You still, when I come to a restaurant such as this, you'll still have words such as hors d'oeuvre, a la carte, buffet. Because the training is to satisfy the foreign palate. If you got your typical, of course nowadays you add a little nduma or something that is African, but you don't have themed Kenyan restaurants. Your sous chef is made in the image of a French sous chef. Your sommelier is trained to have the palate of an Italian wine maker and taster and French and Chilean and South African, not Muratina. So that in our thinking, a tourist is somebody who has come from somewhere. That is the tourist. But what about local tourism? If we could get 5 million Kenyans to be moving to Nanyuki, and when we go there, the theming is the Agikoyo dishes, complete with an explanation of the history of Mukimo. Do we ever wonder about the history of Mukimo? Is it taught here? Do you teach it? You don't. But you are able to tell us how pasta came about. If I go to the coast and I want to look at the Swahili dishes, do we have the story of the Swahili dishes? You don't. When you are training at the Boma, which I frequent because I'm in the Red Cross movement, for which palate do you train? Apart from the Ethiopians who have themed restaurants, or the Eritreans who have themed restaurants, which other Africans have themed restaurants? The greatest claim to fame of Kenyans is nyama choma and ugali. So we must decolonize our foods. The West Africans have decolonized their foods, and many of you are experts in this area. You go to Nigeria, gari, pepe, and when you go there and you want to have breakfast, it is themed. Here, egg on toast. Sausage. The question is whether it's chicken or beef or pork. But these fellows who are now coming, and I'm saying this quite seriously because I want you to look at the number of visitors that Vietnam had last year. Vietnam, which was at war until 1975. The number of visitors they have and the contribution to their economy. The number of visitors to Indonesia. The number of visitors to Thailand, and compare that. If in the continent of Africa, south of Sahara, you moved South Africa and removed Egypt, we don't receive more than 10 million visitors on average every year. Kenya is one of the better ones at 2 million, Tanzania at 2 million, Rwanda possibly 500,000, Uganda possibly 800,000, Botswana in the region of 700,000. Some countries like Equatorial Guinea don't even hit 10,000. Benin about 5,000. Those are statistics that are extant and available. And yet there are things that can be done. And if you look at the complexion of the tourists, your typical tourist who is booking a hotel in Zanzibar or in Mombasa will have an agent who is Italian and will pay using Visa card and is a shoestring budget tourist. When he comes here, the bulk of the money remains there. We now say that tourism contributes about 10%, which is about 1 trillion Kenya shilling to our economy last year. What is 1 trillion Kenya shillings in the scheme of things? Yet we have things that can be done. You know, when you go to my part of the world where there is the lake that the colonialists called Victoria, which was called Lolwe or Nalubale from Uganda, they still use canoes. Can you believe it, my kinsmen? People have yachts. Many of you here have gone to Lake Geneva. And when you go to Lake Geneva, you see the number of sea-going vessels, you have dinner, and it is activity on the lake. What could happen there if we had our own unique way of making fish? And that then becomes the selling point. And that then calls into question, you at Hutali, you are doing a good job without doubt. But what are you doing in order to ensure that we improve our own authentic foods? You at Boma, what are you doing in order to ensure that you train people in our authentic food and you market it as such to the world? When you go to the tourism fairs, what do? Whether you are in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi or in Germany, what are you selling? Those of you who are from the Akamba nation, do we have a history here at Utali on the history of Modokoi? Do you? No, you don't. You come here and you are asked here at Utali or at Boma, we want Spanish omelette. Spanish omelette. Made out of Kiambu, eggs from Kiambu, Spanish. Tomatoes from Kitengela, Spanish. And we do it as if it was the right thing. Right now, the number of tourists are dwindling. They are reducing by the day because the product that you are selling here can be sold elsewhere. You go to the Emiratis, they now have a safari. So you don't have to come to Nairobi Park where you can go for a whole day without seeing a lion because we have built everywhere. We have closed the corridors and the national park in Nairobi is becoming a zoo, if it is not already a zoo. See the numbers of visitors in Portugal, in Spain. You can come from Bratislava in Slovakia by bus at 25 euros and you go to Spain or to Portugal, and these young people who are moving. How many young Africans are moved? When was the last time that you went to the National Museum? Some of us went to the National Museum when it was a lesson in history in Standard 6. After that, people don't go to the National Museum. How many people go to the National Archives? How many people go to the National Park outside of school curriculum? But you go to Europe, Eiffel Tower, you are posing. I'm here to annoy you. Because we must get sufficiently hungry in order to change these things. The Chinese are now coming here. And we of the middle class, when you now feel sasa umeingia katika viwango vya ubora tu, sasa wewe umekuwa nani mbora tu. You take your children to sushi, Chinese restaurant, never a Luo restaurant. Because what do they have at a Luo restaurant anyway? What do they cook there? You go to Burma, what do you have? Burma has been there for many years. In other parts of the world, the thing called Burma would be a tourist attraction. You remember how many of you lived here in Nairobi, Liz, when you had mandazi the size of my head in Burma. And that is what it was famous for. Did we theme it around that? Look at Kentucky Fried Chicken. What is Kentucky Fried Chicken? That 65-year-old man got a recipe from his Negro worker. That is where he got the recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was a Negro house help who came up with the recipe. Today we go around and is the one who is marketing it out in the world. And when you go to church on Sunday, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm suggesting to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the time is now. Those of you, Doc, who have the honor and the privilege of being in training institutions, we must rethink our curriculum. In all sectors. Look at the wine sector, which is now dominated by Chile. The wine sector in Kenya is dominated by Chile. If it is not Mucho Mas, it is something else, Nedaba from South Africa, or Tall Horse. If it is not Tall Horse, it is something else from Italy. If it is Le Diablo de Casiero del Diablo, it is Chile, it is South Africa, and even in areas that we were there, like papaya. How many of you remember papaya? And if you have a headache, we would have improved it. Right now, we are importing wine from Dodoma in Tanzania. My friend here who is a clergy, just check the wine that you are going to administer on Sunday for Holy Communion. It's from Dodoma. What is wrong with our wine industry? What are we teaching about it? What is our own culture about wine? In Africa today, take for example palm wine. Right now, Malaysia produces more palm wine than Nigeria. Malaysia. And they got it from Nigeria. When you go to Nigeria, you still have palm wine in jerrycan. They have now marketed it and standardized it. So where does the money go? It goes to Malaysia. Where are the jobs created? They are created in Malaysia. Because it's about job creation. Right now, if you look at those who are employed in the tourism industry, it could be 3 times over. What are we doing about it? When we are amending the statutes, what are we doing? Are we amending it for ourselves in order to improve our circumstances for the benefit of our economy? And we say that tourism is one of the largest contributors to our economy. It is, but which kind of economy are we talking about? Our economy is just 110 billion United States dollars, give or take. Compare that with the GDP of little Singapore, which is smaller than Nairobi, which is possibly at 500 billion United States dollars. And what are they selling? Look at little Dubai. Right now it is approaching Christmas. They have all people, the middle class are going to Dubai in a zoo called Safari thing, which they have created, that they have imported lions from here. Even our food is now to be found in different parts of the world. We now have ugali, ready-made ugali in supermarkets. In Carrefour, you can buy ugali. Carrefour, which is a French supermarket. Naivas is just following suit, but who are now the major investors in Naivas? It was local, but the others are coming in. Magunas soon will have a foreign investor. And you'll be buying ugali and sukuma wiki pre-cooked. You only heat it. If you are not very careful in the next few years, Mudokoi will be patented by Chinese. Yes. Githeri will be patented by Chinese. As I speak to you now, you go to Kisumu, there is fish from China, tilapia from China. As I speak. And I say all these things because it is important. It is important that it cannot be business as usual. A friend of mine used to say it must be business unusual. And that means that we must have different strains of training. I'm not for one moment suggesting that you should not train in those other things. No, not for one moment. Train people for the European palate. Perfect, have no problem. But also train it so that the others may acquire taste for our food. Those of you who are in the industry, have you not seen people coming from Europe and they say, I am tired of sausage and other things. And I'm happy that things like nduma and sweet potatoes, ngwashe and waru are now being seen at breakfast tables in most hotels. It is a statement that the market is looking for something that is unique and authentic. Certification. I'm one who is never, ever impressed by these international awards that you win. Never. Because you are doing it for others. It says we won an award in Paris. So, why didn't you win one in Lagos, Nigeria? Africans must now begin to create their own standards. We are 1.4 billion of us and growing. Look at that market. That market eats. It is eating on a daily basis. It is eating rice. But where are we importing the rice from? Brazil or Pakistan. They are eating gare in Nigeria. Have we popularized gare? The way in which we cook meat. You will hear you hoteliers say Greek moussaka. Ladies and gentlemen, I can go on and on. But until the day we say that we Africans should think outside of the box, I'm saying no, think without the box. Because if you are thinking outside of the box is still a point of reference. It should not be. And you are in a space that is very critical. Because there is one thing that we are always going to do to eat. And if all else is lost, the only thing that will remain to do is to eat. And if there is an industry that will always be alive, is the eating industry. Even Jesus himself discovered that that was the reality when he made things for 5,000 and 3,000. Did he not realize that fellows can't listen if they have not eaten? So knowing that as we do, and I hope that some of you here who have been in hotel industry have written books. Because there are some programs as I finish. When I'm in my house and I see my wife watching things which are about cooking. But they are white people cooking. In France, in South Africa, I've never seen one in which there is a Nigerian cooking or a Ugandan cooking matoke or a Kamba doing mudokoi. I'm now suggesting to you, you who are here, that we have African recipes, and when you go for the prize, you create a prize for those who are in African foods, which is approved by African institutions. You'll be amazed at what will happen. And I say this in the continent of Africa, continental free trade area. We are now going to release and have removed tariff and non-tariff barriers. We are going to have people coming into Kenya and people going within the East African region. In East Africa alone, we are nearly 400 million. With the introduction of Democratic Republic of Congo and Somalia, and of course, when Ethiopia does join, we are moving easily into 600 million. And if we were to do that, our hotel industries are going to change in a very dramatic way. What is the Ministry of Tourism in this country going to do? And in the continent of Africa, what are we going to do? Because otherwise, we'll always be dominated. And this has been Africa's plight, her domination by others. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in a good space. And I want to say that Kenya, compared to other African countries, we have no equal. That is without doubt. But I'm suggesting that we cannot continue to rest on our laurels. The time is now to create a new generation, because there must be an intergenerational passage of knowledge. When I look at the average age in this room is about 45. You are not doing very well. Apart from that table, the rest of us are dinosaurs. I want to see younger people getting into this space. And I want to see younger people reading your books that have been written. Boma, have you done a book on recipes? Boma, have you? Boma, have you done one? That is the next assignment. Utalii, you've been here since 1975, is it? Or 69, is it? How many books have you written? And I can confirm to you, there are theses, PhD theses that have been written in Switzerland out of Utalii by non-Africans. Your organization, have you done a book that tells us what to do in the hotel industry? When we are classifying hotels, which standard do we look to? Michelin? Why must we be standardized by others? When we say 5-star, who said that there was 5 stars? Whose stars are they? This 7 stars, this 4 stars, this 1 star. Whose are they? In East Africa, can we not say that we are moving away from that classification and introducing an African standardization? Can't we? We can. And it takes courage and thinking without the box. What have you to lose now? What have you not achieved? Nothing. Why aren't your ideas not revolutionary? You in the ministry, my dear sister, when you are amending the law, and I know, because I'm involved in some of these things, you'll discover that you are amending the law because the Swiss government still comes here to tell you what to do. Because they pay not more than 1 million euro. They come and tell you, and they bring in little girls who are the age mate of your children as experts. And you obey them. You call them, yes, sir, yes, madam. Because they have paid. Yet we can do it through the training levy. We can. Only 2% of that amount of money can do all these things. You imagine, Utalii, if you are to be marketing yourselves. I used to come here when I was a young man for breakfast every Sunday. When you are doing very well, suppose it were to be advertised that you have one of the biggest Sunday lunches, which is African breakfast. And I saw it happen at Sankara when somebody called Krishna came from China, and he themed it today. He has once every month a lunch where he charges 9,950 per adult, 5,550 for a child of 5 years, and he is oversubscribed. That is what Italy should be doing. I would come here, not go there. But you are not doing it. So my clarion call is that the time is now to change. And the beauty is that when we admit that we have a problem, then it is easier to change. And my understanding is that you are here to change. The beauty of people like me who are not in the industry is that we are like visitors. When a visitor comes, you see cobwebs that you long thought were part of your furniture. That is the role that I have come here to play. To remind you, because we are curious people, want our economy to grow, and we think that one of the areas where you can truly create employment in this country is the tourism industry. And if you imagine to yourself, if in the next 2 years we were to get even 5 million visitors, what impact it would have in terms of the employment in this particular sector. And it can't be done, it must be deliberately done. And I hold the view that you are the very same who are going to do something about it. So, sitazungumza mengi, mimi nimekuja hapa kuwakemea tu na kuwakasirisha tu na kusema vitu ambavyo vinawakera tu, kwa kuwa na imani ya kwamba mkikereka vizuri basi macho yatafunguka na mtakuwa na mitazamo tofauti katika hii tasnia ya utalii. Na hakika kwamba mtaichangia vizuri tu, na katika Jumuiya la Afrika Mashariki lazima tuiuze kama eneo moja. Hiyo ndio itatutatulia mambo mengi tu. Kwa hivyo asanteni sana, sitasema kama chiriku aliyekunywa maji ya chooni.